Hello, welcome to Pantheon for Geeks. This is the first ever Malifaux Monday, which is hopefully a series that we're going to be doing. And this episode is basically an overview of Malifaux. For everyone who doesn't know what Malifaux is, we decided to start right at the beginning. We're going to do an overview this week. Next week, we're going to go into the game mechanics, and then we're going to go into different aspects every week. Hopefully, without fail, every week. But it'll be Malifaux Mondays. Look out for them. And it'll be every Monday, or as close as we can get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first one. So, what is Malifaux? Well, Malifaux is a skirmish game basically. It was made by a company called Weird, and it was the company Weird was founded in 2005. Malifaux was first released in 2009. And it would be 2011 before me and Claire actually found this game. And thought, whoa, this is really cool.
Yeah.
As I said, at its heart, it's a skirmish game. So you're not using loads and loads of miniatures like in 40k or Warhammer or stuff like that. It's more along the lines of the miniature count of War Machine or other skirmish games.
It's like having a crew, basically.
Yeah.
That all have synergy with each other.
Yeah. Its setting is an alternate Earth where basically there's a dimension opened in the universe and on Earth and in the past. So it's one of those ones with an alternate history basically with magic in there as well. So a rift opens and it's basically gone through to a different dimension. Now this is where they found the city of Malifaux. They've gone through this thing, they call it a breach. Right, so there's this rift is called a breach, and being on the other side of it's called being breach side. So you're on Earth side or you're on breach side. So this rift opens just outside a city called Malifaux, which is the first place they discovered when they went over. Mm-hmm. And when they went over, there was much blood and gore and chaos, and basically they got told never to come back again. And then the breach closes, and then years and years pass. And then it opens again. They send some people through and they find no evidence of anyone around basically. When they've gone in there, they've found these resources called soul stones, and that's basically the reason for going into the breach. These soul stones basically allow you to perform magic. Magic has pretty much left Earth. It's very difficult to do any kind of magic on Earth, a bit like in reality really. But on the other side of the breach, magic is more commonplace.
Stronger.
And some people can harness it a lot easier than others. And people who were normal on this side of the breach, they cross the breach and something happens to them. They mutate, or they suddenly become really intelligent, or something happens. It's very individual as well. And some of them become basically people who can use these soul stones to perform massive feats of magic. So these soul stones become, and they can be transferred to the Earth side, so they become a resource which is worth mining basically. So in the background, a guild is formed, which is the guild in the game, who basically are in charge of mining all this resource out and shipping it back to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not obviously like the gold rush, but it's like soulstone rush. So the theme for Malifaux, it's set in a very Victorian 19th sort of like, is it turn of the century?
Turn of the century, yeah.
Victorian-esque.
Steampunk.
It's got like the overtones of Victorian London. It's got steampunk in there. It's got gothic in there.
It's got a bit of Wild West in there.
Yeah, it's very Wild West. It's got a very thematic Wild West theme to it. When you look at the edges of the city of Malifaux, almost like medieval as well. It's got such a mix. Obviously, we've hit into the Victorian era. We've got the Industrial Revolution going on.
Renaissance era.
Yeah, and the parts of Malifaux are actually covered in industrial sectors, parts of it. It's such a mix that obviously it can lead to such good battlefields when you're actually playing it.
The further out you go, the more Wild West it becomes, as like the Pampas or whatever it's called in Malifaux. I can't actually remember off the top of my head.
Badlands.
Badlands, that'll be it, yeah.
So, this mix, as I mentioned, we've got different factions in Malifaux. So obviously, as always happens, is a new area that's opened up, a lot of different people flood into that. Initially, what was flooding into there were convicts, because those were the only people that were sort of like would volunteer to go in. So sort of a pardon, and you have to go to Malifaux basically. as a colonist. So it's a, bit like the original sort of colony of Australia, if you will.
Yeah, and America.
Filled with British convicts. Yeah, just being sent over and sent over. So it's a very cool sort of background when you get into it. Oh, it's actually really good. So in the beginning, there was 5 factions. So we had the Guild, who were the ones that were sent over, got the contract or whatever, to mine in Malifaux. So they're the ones that are basically the law and order of Malifaux, even though in a way they're corrupt as well. So by law and order I don't mean good, I just mean they're the law. They're the ones
according to themselves.
Yeah, basically. We have the Arcanists, who are basically like a bunch of rebels, if you will. They also work for Malifaux, in a way, because they're part of the Miners and Steamfitters and UFI Union. So Miners and Steamfitters Union, which is basically run by a guy called Ramos, who is an Arcanist, which is an illegal user of magic, if you will. And all the people who are legally using magic, and also the Steam Fitters Unions and stuff like that, who are the workers that are all sort of come under his jurisdiction. So he's quite a powerful foe to the Guild, really, because he's the one that's in charge of building the railways, he's the one in charge of building the factories, all the mining that goes on, so all the soul stones all come through him. So he has first pick of everything, so it's made him very powerful. And he's the biggest sort of threat to the Guild, but he's one that they need as well, because he's really clever. He makes all the machines himself.
Ramos is a pretty decent guy.
Yeah, I like Ramos. He has his own agendas, which I don't think have been revealed yet. And he also has giant mechanical spiders, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So,
but he seems to work well with the Guild, though, at the moment. I mean,
he does,
in the
even
books
though
he did.
Hoffman's sort of investigating him.
Yes.
So then we have the Neverborn, who are basically the original denizens of Malifaux. How we would describe them, kind of like spectres, ghosts, demons.
Yeah.
All of that roll into one.
Yeah.
Not flesh and blood, really.
Or
some of them are, some of them aren't.
Paranormal.
They're very hard to put your finger on how to describe a Neverborn, but they are the ones that used to live in that world, and so it's obviously their world, basically. They own it. And then we have also the Resurrectionist faction, which is basically a bunch of people who've gone across the breach and found that they have the ability to raise the dead, really. So necromancers, basically. There was a faction in history called the Resurrectionists, and that's what it's based on. So go look that up, guys, if you want to see a bit more about that. But it was a time back in the Victorian era where people did call themselves Resurrectionists, but there wasn't any real magic behind it. But this is the magical version where they really can raise the dead and really can do what they set out to.
Yeah, the historical ones where they just used to grave rob, basically.
Yeah, so is it Burke and Hare?
Yeah,
okay.
and sell the bodies to medical science, basically.
They were also included within that bunch of people. So the last of the original factions are the Outcasts, and that's basically a span of mercenaries, people who don't fit into anything else, and the Gremlins, who like Summerteeth Jones, for instance. The Gremlins are also original denizens of Malifaux, but not quite classed as Neverborn because they are flesh and blood, and have their own sect and race of their own, basically. So they're another race that lived there, but they're very, very different. Imagine goblins. That's the nearest thing I can say to them. Goblins and the Gremlins from the Gremlins movies, kind of like a mix of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not far off. So the thing about Malifaux is that from day one, we had the Chronicles of Malifaux, then we had the Rulebooks, we had the version 1 rulebook, then we had the version 1.5 rulebook, which I'll show you now. So this was the original Malifaux rulebook. So you've been looking at a blank screen up to now, so sorry for that. I'll try and remember to put some pictures up.
Yeah.
So this is the 1.5 book. And the thing about this is a very story-driven world. This is a character-driven skirmish game. It is very, because the game is constantly evolving. I would say even more so than War Machine does. I mean, War Machine does advance its characters, but this book to book, something's happening which is new. So it is very much like reading a proper story or watching a film or watching a series. Everything's always changing in it.
And you get to care about the characters,
You do.
or the ones that are your crew. You get to care about them. I mean, when I read it, I cared very much what happened to some of my characters.
Yeah, that you'd picked.
That I'd picked. So, yeah. And it was good to see the interaction of all the crew's masters and how they regarded each other.
Yeah. A lot of this progression has also been done through the various books that have come out. So we also had Twisting Fates and Rising Powers. So with Twisting Fates, and then we had a Rising Powers book come out. And these were all books with more rules in, and new miniatures to do, and new members of the Keris there. She's a good one.
Yeah.
Obviously,
the
Arcanists, that's their section. So these books got some beautiful artwork. These books, because they've got stories in, which are not reprinted in the next edition because the story moves on, are still worth having.
Yeah.
Unlike other companies who just redo the same codex or
rehash.
Should I say codex? Whoops. Same book with something not much new in it, basically.
Yeah.
But the stories in these are still worth keeping and still worth reading because this is basically the history of Malifaux right here. So there's another thing, that's what I really like about it. Even though you're using characters, which, you know, sometimes you want to use your own unique character that you've designed, Malifaux can't really do that. Malifaux uses preset characters, but it does it in such a way that it's really interesting, that you're following their stories.
Yeah.
You're playing as them. So, you know, I do like making my own characters. Whenever I play an RPG, I make my own character, but Malifaux has really struck me as something where I really want to know what happens to these characters, and I want to get into, you know, playing as them, and
you get to know them.
Yeah,
it's
you
like,
do. Even
it's like
the evil
friend.
ones. Yeah, even the evil ones you can kind of sympathise with sometimes, which is a bit strange. So the other thing that Weird do, they also have a free online chronicle, and the story advances in that as well as having extra rules and scenarios and painting guides, sort of things going on, and painting contests all on in these weird chronicles that they have online. They also have the stories advanced in them as well. So I haven't even read all those. I've read most of them, but not all of them. So there's even gaps in the story which I haven't yet. So I'm going to have to catch up on some of those chronicles to find out what's happened to some of the characters, and then that fits in between when they release books. So Weird in the past, they've killed off characters from the books. I'll not spoil it by telling you which ones. I'll let you go and seek that out yourself. And they've also advanced characters from mere henchmen into masters themselves over time. So the next book that came out, after these came out, actually introduced a brand new faction into Malifaux. So this was the Storm of Shadows book. Here it is. And this brought in the Ten Thunders faction. So this was the 6th faction for the game. This is still in the 1st edition of Malifaux. So the Ten Thunders are basically from the Middle East, would you say? Eastern? What?
Eastern,
they're all over the place, to be fair.
Like Japanese and
There's a lot of Japanese and
Chinese.
Chinese influence, but they also have people from across the globe.
Yeah.
Really. It's like a criminal organisation. That's the best way to describe it. A globe
it's like a cartel, isn't it? Really?
Which has gone into Malifaux. So obviously this one's very Chinese, sort of Japanese looking.
Yeah.
And then we have some more, but if we go through the book, you'll see the
Illuminated, which is part of the Neverborn.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. This, because it's a cartel, it infiltrates every other faction. So every faction has somebody working for the Ten Thunders. So the Ten Thunders faction actually incorporates one of every faction plus its own models.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting faction because you can have like Resurrectionists and Guild and Arcanists all working together technically.
Yeah.
So there's the very cool. I like these guys.
Yeah. These are Resurrectionists.
This is one box set I do not own. I think it's the only Resurrection box set I do not own, which is Yanlon. And I would like to get that one at some point. There he is. So that was the next book that came out. It advanced the storyline and brought us to sort of a cataclysmic sort of situation in Malifaux where lots of things happened to the characters, and then it ended because that was the end of edition 1, and we had to wait a while before we found out what happened to a lot of these characters. So those were the books from Malifaux. And the only one we're missing there, which I do have somewhere but I couldn't quite locate it, was a small version of the rules, which is just the rules. It's a very small book. It's very handy.
So actually, I've got it here.
Oh right, so there it is.
So
I wonder
there
where
it
it
is.
was.
Yeah.
I looked everywhere for that. So that was the rules manual, so that's how thick the rules are itself, and that's got all the scenario rules for actually playing the game in. There's no story really in there, there's just little bits here and there, but nothing massive. That is essentially all you need to play the game is that. You don't need all this stuff. What you need is the rules and then the crews that you've got, and you should be able to play it from there really. So that was a small manual. Just to show you the cards from Malifaux Edition 1.
No,
Kept them in these nice wallets. I shall pull it out. The green for Resurrectionists. So we have Seamus the Mad Hatter. So this is a first edition card. So these were the rules actually put on the cards. Which told you everything you need to know about the guy.
It was like a little book.
On the other side we had a picture. And then inside we had some more rules. Which told you everything you need to know about the guy. So once you had this book and these for each of your models, that's all you needed to play. As far as rules were concerned. You only needed the rules for whatever you had on the board at the time. So you went on to trawl through endless rule books. So now that's been advanced, but I'll get to the new card in a minute. So this was Malifaux Edition 1, and then it advanced on to the second edition of Malifaux. So let's remove these books. So then Malifaux second edition hit. So this is the main rulebook for Malifaux second edition. It's slightly thicker than the original, and there's more story in this as well, and this advanced the story further. We have some really cool artwork in here as well as some different things. So just to show you the new cards as well, so each crew you buy will have the cards in. If you own the first edition models, you could buy a Arsenal box, which is basically a deck of cards with these cards in, which tells you the new abilities, upgrades, costs, and everything else you need to know, and they're double-sided. So that same one I showed you before with the inside and everything is the same as that. That's Seamus. Seamus is a master for the Resurrectionists. So I just opened it right on the Resurrectionist page as well. I thought I was going to have to shuffle through that. So these are the Resurrectionists. They're always in green, which is cool. And there's Seamus. It's like a planned that. So there is. So that's his entry in the book. So if you have the book, it's also got a copy of the card in there anyway. But if you've bought the actual deck as well, you can use the deck with your new models, or if you buy the new models, because after the first edition models were in metal, and then they moved on to plastic. So there are new models for all these guys, and every time you buy them, you get the cards in them as well, which is cool.
I think the plastic started off when the 10 Thunders came in, because they started doing a few of the factions in the new plastic set.
Yes, they did. So just before the second edition started, the plastics started with the 10 Thunders, you're quite right. And now all the models are now in plastic, which is a great relief because the metal ones are really fiddly to put together, some of them. Which we'll show you one in a minute. But also introduced for the first time into second edition were upgrade cards. So before now, all you'd have was your crew, as it was, but now you can choose different upgrades for different people. So those are the Resurrectionist upgrade cards, and we'll get onto them again as well. Also around this time, they brought out a plastic box set called the University of Transmortis. I think that came out just before this as well, and it was in plastic. So this is basically like a mini campaign that you can play. And it had some models with it as well, some very cool models, and some very cool rules for playing it. A different kind of game, a very narrative based game, and I hope to do some more of these because this is a very cool add-on that they did. So next and the latest came Crossroads, which is the second, like we had 4 books before, this is the second of the second edition books, and this came along with all models, some of them new, some of them old, but all new cards for all of them. And also now the second set of Arsenal packs have come out as well. So you don't have to buy new models for this. All you need to do is basically, if all you want to do is play the game, you buy yourself one of these, which is the small version of the new rules, and you buy yourself, if you don't want the models, just the Arsenal packs. You use all your old models. So that's the expense you've got based on how many models you've got, basically. So if you're just doing one faction, say you're just doing the Resurrectionists, you're talking a deck of cards for each release. So there's probably going to be like 4 decks of cards and that book, and that's over quite a long period of time, to be fair. So it's not much expense if you don't want the new models. If you do want the new models, obviously when you buy the new models you'll get cards with that as well. So that is a quick overview of the history so far. There's probably bits we've missed, and because there's a lot to go through really. And what I'm going to do now is just show you quickly what you'd need to play a game of Malifaux. Okay, so you'll need 2 crews. And then here we have 2 crews. These are the old metal first edition crews. We don't have the plastic new ones for these yet. We might get them, we might not. We don't need to, it's just optional. This is the Seamus crew for the Resurrectionists, and that is
Lady J, Lady Justice for the Guild.
For the Guild. So she's basically a Resurrectionist hunter, so this would be a good match off really. So what we have here is the master of the crew, who is Seamus, who's basically a cross between sort of Jack the Ripper and the Mad Hatter. We have Lady J,
who's technically blind.
She's a master.
Well, she's blind, but she can actually see things. A bit like Daredevil kind of thing.
Yeah. But better looking. And with the lining corsets.
Yeah.
Each master will have a totem or a set of totems. The totem for Seamus is this guy who's the copycat killer. He's like a tiny little leprechaun that jumps out of his hat.
And the totem for Lady J is like the Scales of Justice.
Yep.
So
just a note, when these are the starting crews, these are the old metal starting crews, so you would get that in an old metal starting crew. And in the new plastic crew you get that. So you had to buy the totem separate originally, but now you get them with them, which is really cool. So to move on, usually with a crew you get a henchman. This is Madame Sybil. Look how lovely she is. Isn't she lovely? Yeah, so that's Madame Sybil. She is the henchman. And a henchman's kind of like a second in command. In a small game, which is called a shootout, which is, as I mentioned before, soul stones are in the game. Soul stones denote the cost of everything. So in a small game, which we'll get to in a minute, a henchman can be the leader. But normally, you've got a master. So the henchman for...
is the judge.
The judge, there he is.
There he is. With his sword.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then we finish off by rounding out with some minions, basically. So we have the Rotten Bells, who are basically ladies of the night, who are now undead and under Seamus's control. And then on the other side we have
the Death Marshals.
The Death Marshals.
Who are like cowboys, if you
will. Kind of like Brave Star. Well, there's a reference.
The Brave Star, yeah. That sit on coffins and lock them up. Basically, they kill undead, basically. So
they're undead hunters.
Yeah.
So that one's very cool because something's escaping that coffin.
Yeah, and it's trying very hard to
keep that one in.
Keep it short.
So you'll need the 2 crews. With the 2 crews, either through the Arsenal boxes or with if you buy the new versions of the crew. So for these, we've got the Arsenal boxes. So you'll need, these are 30-point crews I've just done for this, but later on in some later episodes we'll get into proper costings and stuff and what's best to take. So we've got Seamus. Now on this card you can see he's got a cash of 3 and no cost. The master never costs any money. The master brings along with him a cache of soul stones. Now for soul stones you're probably going to need some sort of marker for soul stones because it's quite useful to have one. You just use a pen and paper if you want, but we use these little beads that we've got, these little glass beads, because I think they'll make quite good soul stones. So he will generate for himself 3 soul stones. Lady J
has 4.
Has 4, so she will generate 4 soul stones. And these can be used during the game to do things that you couldn't normally do. So even though these people are powerful on their own, they can then use soul stones to change things, change their fate. Next in the crew will be the totem for the leader. In this case, it's the Copycat Killer. There is the Copycat Killer, who's the totem. Now at the top, he doesn't have a cash, he has a cost. Towards the crew's cost, he will cost 3 points. That's the first 3 points that I've spent. He also has abilities and attack actions on the back as well. So that's the Copycat Killer for this crew. And then for
Lady J's crew, we have
the Scales of
Justice.
And the sort of eagle-eyed of you will notice I've laminated these cards, not these ones. I'm going to laminate these ones as well. It's really handy just to laminate them just for protection. So that's the totem for Lady J. He also costs 3 points.
Well, if you laminate them, you have these little
boxes you can tick off.
That you can tick off and things like that. So.
Those are hit points. Those little things there. That's the actual hit points of a model. So obviously Seamus's has got loads, whereas the totem's only got a few. Because the totem's generally the weakest thing in your gang, but he does something which augments the master. Next was the henchman. So Madame Sybil. Now, because she's a henchman, as I said before, she can actually lead a crew. If you're playing a shootout match, which is 10 to 25 soul stones, they can actually lead your crew. In which case you'd ignore her cost and use her cash, so she'd generate 5 of these. In this case, she's not a leader, so she actually costs 8 soul stones to be added onto the crew. The next stage up, which these would fit into, would be a dust up, which is a 26 to 40 point crew. These are going to be 30 point crews, so they fit into the dust up scenario. The next one up is a scrap, which is 41 soul stones plus. But generally, what people play them at when they're playing like competitively or just in general is 50 soul stones. That's kind of like what people play them at. But as we're going through some of these videos, we'll build up to that and show you what kind of synergies you get between the different models. So, what's the henchman for you guys?
It's the judge.
The judge.
The judge.
The dude in white.
Yeah.
The judge is 9 points. Again, his cash would be 4, but in this case he costs 9 points. Then come the minions. So here are the rotten bells. Each one with their own little picture, which is similar to the one there. Not. I'll show you why in a second. These will be similar to the plastic models that come in the box set. It should be pretty recognisable. And it's important to be able to tell the difference between multiple people, because obviously you're recording the damage separately. So each of these costs 5. So in Lady J's crew we have the Death Marshals.
The Death Marshals, and as you'll see, these are completely different pictures from the crew again. These are cost 6.
So these are the original Rotten Bell cards, so you can see they actually do match the models that are there. And pretty much the colours that I've painted them as well, because I tried to match it as close as possible just for recognisability. So there's the purple one. He's very, very close. So we'd have to find some way of marking which one's which, or just declaring which one's which at the beginning.
And the same with the Death Guard. Death Marshal. Death Guard.
Cool.
I wish.
I wish. I'd win. They're my guys. So in this case, that is a 30 point crew, and this is a 26 point crew. Both currently in the dust up area of the fight. However, because I'm outnumbered, I can buy upgrades. So if we were playing this to 30 soul stones, I would then be able to buy a bunch of upgrades. So for instance, my henchman can have 2 upgrades. My master can have 3 upgrades, and if you have someone called an enforcer on your team, they can have a 1 upgrade. The upgrade cards come in different flavours. There's basically normal cards that anyone can have. However, at the bottom it says rare 3, so you can only have 3 of these in your crew. So that would cost 1 soul stone to field, and you would add that onto the model. We have ones that are name specific, so this is the henchman Madame Sybil. Again, this would cost 1 soul stone. We have Seamus there, unlimited. When it says limited, you can only have 1 limited card in your crew. So if I took this, I couldn't have another limited card. You've got the bag of tools, and another one that says Seamus only, and that is the Red Chapel Killer himself. So we'll go more into these when we actually look at these crews in depth. But that is the basic overview of what you would build for a crew. So once you've got your models and your cards to one side, and you've also got your soul stones ready, then you would also need some extra stuff. So let's go into that. So the next thing you're going to probably want to have some of is counters. Now in the game we generate different kinds of counters. Some of them are corpse counters, some of them are scrap counters, some of them are counters so as you put onto an actual card to show that they're poisoned or have some other kind of condition. So you can either print them off from a PDF from the website, corpse counter there, or you can use any other kind of method. The basic rule is that they've got to be on like a 30mm base. So I went online and from Secret Weapon, I haven't opened these yet, I got some corpse fields, 30mm bases with corpses on, which make great corpse counters. So they basically just line the battlefield for corpses, and you only need to use these if one of your crews has the ability to use them. If you don't, neither of your crews has the ability to use these, you don't need to use them at all. That's only when one of your crews, the reses use these, so if we fought those two gangs together, we'd be using them. The other template you're going to need are explosive templates. They're 50mm marker, so you can find anything that's just a 50mm circle, and that'll do. Again, these come off the same PDF online. Obviously we had the soul stones, you need them, or anything to mark them. And if you're using a crew like Ramos, for instance, you're going to be wanting some scrap tokens. And again, I found these, which make very cool scrap tokens. And these are machined scrapyard round bases from Eden. Post-apocalyptic miniatures game. No idea what that is. I might have to look at that in the future. But these were very cool bases and I thought they make great scrap counters, so that's why I got them. So 10 should be enough for that. And that's it really. You might need a few little counters just to represent poisoned, as I said. You can use anything to represent it as long as your opponent knows what they are. In addition, you might have some objective markers. So I made these little objective markers there. So that is basically a neutral objective marker, which is why it's in a black base. However, we also had some green bases, which we did. So instead of putting them on my models, I actually used them to make objectives with. So that's a leg and a bag. That's a bunch of tools, syringes, and that's kind of like a tray with some goo going on there. I might put some blood on that actually, some of that blood for the blood god. But yeah, they can be used as objective markers. You can also just use anything you want as an objective marker. I just decided to go a bit fancy because I have some spare parts lying around.
Like a leg in a bag.
Like a leg in a bag. As you do.
And you do.
You always have spare parts lying around, don't you?
No.
Oh, okay. Another thing you'll need for Malifaux 2, or you don't need it, but it's very, very handy. They actually do a deck of cards for strategies and schemes, which are things we'll get to later on, but they're very useful to have as a card. You don't need it, you can just use the ones in the book and then write it down what you're doing, but that saves you writing it down, which is always good as a time saver. You also need a tape measure. This is obviously not a weird product, but it is a tape measure. Nonetheless, it has inches on it. That's all that matters. And then the last thing, and probably the most important thing you'll need, is a deck of cards. Now you can buy specific decks of cards. This is the deck of cards for the Resurrectionists. I don't think they do these ones anymore with the green line and Malifaux one. They do a set of arcane cards, which is exactly the same on the other side, I think. And they've got quite cool pictures on. So we have a red Joker and a black Joker. I'll focus on that. And then we have the different kind of suits. You can use a normal deck of cards, and there is a matrix in the rulebook to show you how to translate them into the different suits. But in Malifaux, we don't have hearts, diamonds, clubs, and what's the other one?
Spades.
Spades. We have crows. We have rams. We have tombs, which are like bulks. They're called tombs. And we have masks. There we go. So we have the 4 suits and we have the 2 joker cards, and they go into this. And that tells us what we do. So there's no dice in this game, it's all done through cards. So when you're doing stuff, you're pulling cards out and adding them to your stats to get results to beat your opponent, basically. Those are some of the mechanics of the game, but we'll go more into that in the second video when we do the actual game mechanics. And other than that, just general stuff. Basically, you're going to need scenery. So if you remember, I did a little let's paint some scenery for Malifaux. And there we go. There it is. So these crates are really good in Malifaux because height is a thing in Malifaux, whether you can see someone over something or not. So she'll be like height 2 and the crate will be height 1, and then you might have an object or a model which is height 1 down here and it can't see her. So height is an issue, as well as base size. And then you can have other things as well, like buildings, hills, anything you have in a normal game. This is one we've got as a test. This is basically like an adobe, is it called, sort of building?
Yeah, something
Mexican
like that.
Badlands type thing. That's pretty cool. It works quite well. It's we painted this some time ago actually. There's full interior detail, which is very useful. And I might go into some more detail on where I got that from and how I painted it if I get some more. But you can use anything you want. You can also use Terraclips terrain. We've got some Terraclips terrain as well.
Yeah.
Do an entire board of Terraclips terrain. That's how we used to play Malifaux. And as I said right at the beginning, it covers as various styles from deserts to swamps to cities.
To sewers.
To sewers, yeah. Sewers is a very good one. It suits Malifaux down to the ground, that. Well, no pun intended there. So that is the basic overview of what you need to play the game. The other thing I'm going to mention is obviously you've got your crews, and then you can get add-on models that sort of like complement those crews. So they haven't done all the new cards for that yet, just bear in mind. So an old crew, for instance, would be the 3 Bells, Seamus the Mad Hatter, Madam Sybil, and the Copycat Killer, which you've seen in the new cards. But I've got the old cards for these, but no new ones because they haven't done the new ones yet. So you could then add on some new models like this, which is a dead Doxy. There we go. There's one dead Doxy, and there's 2 dead Doxies. So those were the original cards for the Doxies. We're still waiting. I don't know whether they're in the second batch or not.
Might be in the second wave.
But I need to order them pronto and get them here to have a look. So you add on new models. Generally, you can add on any model you want from the faction, but some of them are better synergies. Like Dead Doxies do work quite well with Seamus. In addition to this, each master has also got an avatar. And again, they haven't redone the avatars yet, but Seamus is the avatar of Dread, and there he is. And just to show you that model, because I do have it, he's there. It basically turned into Jekyll and Hyde from Jack the Ripper. So, and I've also got an alternate version of Seamus with a purple hat as well, just for fun. That was the alternate Seamus that they did. That's a metal model, which I thought was pretty cool. Lady J.
She is the avatar of balance, and that's her card there.
And this is her really cool model, which is pretty difficult to stick together.
Yeah.
Where she's got rams and crows. See, rams, crows.
Coming out of her hands.
Coming out of her hands, so she's balancing sort of like, they're all like life and death almost. That's her avatar. And
I got the alternate version of her,
which is...
She's a really cool stance.
You can see that. But again, we'll go more into these in future episodes and how they work. Basically, they're just more powerful versions. You do have to buy them as extra in your crew, but when you activate them, they become more powerful. And yeah, so in a game, I told you about the encounter size and the factions. In a game, you'll just deploy your troops and you'll fight each other. But the game itself, the most important thing about Malifaux is it comes down to victory points. If you table your opponent, you can't necessarily win. It has to come down to victory points. There are times I've had one model left and I've won.
Mm-hmm.
That's because you score victory points throughout the game as you go along. So if you complete your own schemes and strategies from the deck that I'll go into in the actual game video, you will win the game. So losing your models isn't the end of the game. If your models are weaker than your opponents, but you complete and you die, but you complete your objectives, you're going to win. It's about completing the objectives. It's one of the main things about Malifaux. It's not just about gunning each other down. It really is about going through your objectives, finishing what you need to do, stopping your opponent from doing the same, if that's by killing them, yeah. But you can stun them, stop them, paralyse them, just get them out of the way, basically, while you do your objectives and stop them from doing theirs.
Mm-hmm.
The maximum objectives you can score in a game is 10. So basically you could easily draw if you both scored 10 points. So it is as important to stop your opponent as it is to score the points yourself. So it comes down to a lot of strategy, which I find in the games that we've played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It come down to a lot of strategy and outthinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope that's given you a better idea if you didn't know anything about Malifaux. This is only the first Malifaux Monday video. There will be many more, I hope, if people enjoy this. If they don't, well, it might only be a few, but I'm hoping people enjoy this and want to see more of our models, of how we paint them. So we might be doing some showcases, let's paints, playthroughs, battle reports, tactics videos, the whole works, basically. That's what we're going for. But the next video will be a more in-depth look at how the game actually works, what you do with the cards, and some examples of movement, fighting, and everything like that. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
So, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And bye for now.
Hope to see you soon.
Certainly.
Bye.
Bye.